This is a short training showcasing the creation of an MVC reference architecture project which leverages a custom form controller. In 10 little steps we will create a project, bring in all the custom form controller related code, create a first form and make it a hello world application. So let's get started. We create our first project. And when done, we are going to import the first set of libraries. So we are going to include queue for promises, this timer patch as a polyfill for set timeout, and we are also going to include our custom form controller. So we are going to copy this all over from our application, which you may have retrieved, which is the MVC sample app 73 RA for reference architecture. So let's copy these over to our sample application here. And now what we have to do is we need to refresh our project so that all this new code will be taken into account properly. So with this we have resolved steps 1 and 2. Now let's create a first form. Let's give it a reasonable name. You'll see that the automatically generated controller will be renamed to fit the naming convention form name plus controller. Let's beautify the form a little bit. And I prepared a collection which will enable me to create a form super quickly with the default header and footer. I just have to adapt the initial position. So there we go, we have a virtually perfect form. Our next step is to prepare the main controller. Now let's have a look at the README of our sample application. It goes through exactly these steps which I mentioned in the PowerPoint slide. So out of the box, when we're looking at the generated controller, we're just getting this, which is a bit meager. So out of the box, the custom controller will look for two functions, which are init and onload. The next step is the preparation of the view subcontroller, because the custom form controller is allowing you to define a view subcontroller which can take all the UI related actions so that the main controller can focus on user journey, like getting information, saving information, going to the next page, etc. So the expectation is that you create a require module here and that you name it with the name of your form followed by a view controller. So prepare the little stub here in this README, which is exactly what the form controller is expecting. So this is providing one function which actually defines a fully fledged object, which then allows you to have class level private entities and then have all the functions which you need for initializing your view controller, binding events to your controls, and having a place for all your other functions which you need to implement for animations, etc., etc. With this we have finished steps 4 and 5. Now we need to create a startup function like this one here, because as we are using a custom form controller, we need to register the form against the custom controller. So for every form we have to make a call to MVC app.register controller. So let's put this into a standard JavaScript module so that we can call this function globally. So I'll just rename this file. So this is like starting point for my application. And as a next step, we have to make sure that we are attaching the startup to the post app init event, which we can do here. So we select the channel, we go to the post app init event, we select invoke function, where we can now invoke our global function. This makes sure that the controller, the right controller, our extended controller, will be used when the functions which are defined here in this map and the functions which are defined here in this map, these functions will be injected into the controller which has been defined for your form. So our scaffolding is done. Now the expectation is that we are getting, when we are running this application, that we're getting a printout like this, that we're initializing the application, and then our controller and the view controllers are being initialized. So let's have a look at how this is working out for us. So I'm building this for iOS. So I'll run this directly through Xcode. There we are, our application is loaded, looks a bit empty. Let's have a look if all the functions have been called. So init MVC app has been called. So we went through the constructor, navigate of the extended controller has been called. Controllers have been initialized and defined. We went through init of the view controller as well. Bind events has been called as well. At the end we're ending up in show, and when we are done, forms on the screen while on load will be executed as well. So looks good so far. All the scaffolding has been done. Now we can build our Hello World app, which is actually our step number 8. So we are going to add a label widget to our screen. Okay, so there we go. We have a properly placed label. We'll give it a decent name like label Hello World. You can give it some default text. So there we are. Now what we need in step 8 is a function which, well actually in step 9, is a function which enables us to say hello. Now we said that we have our user journey, which happens in the main controller, and we have all UI interactions which happen in the view controller. So let's say we need a function here in our view controller where we'll say, okay, this should put something on the screen. So we can say, and it will say something. And this something needs to be put into our label. So above, for convenience sake, I already accessed like this view, which is our form, so we can just say form label hello world, and then put something into our text here. So we need to expose this function publicly so that it will be visible through the controller. There we go. And now in the home controller we can leverage our view controller and call this function. So we can say this get view controller, and then I can say hello world. Okay, so there we are. So we have the view controller who on load needs to do something. So maybe he got some data from somewhere, and then it's going to pass this data to our view controller, and the view controller is in charge of putting it on the screen. Well, let's have a look how this is working out for us. Hello world. There we go. So this concludes this tutorial. We hope this will help you get a quick start on using MVC reference architecture together with this custom form controller. Obviously, you could have achieved this also without a custom form controller whose actual power is not just the separation of duties between the main controller and the view controller, but especially when it's especially useful when it comes to instantiating data service objects which handle the service calls for you, and also the initialization of your data objects which you want to persist on your screen. Thank you very much, and have a good day.